Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, and I'm so glad you've joined me for part 2 of our story tonight. If you haven't heard part 1, click on the description because you don't want to miss out on the whole tapestry of the story as it's weaved together and becomes a final story. And there's nothing that beats a good old story. So let's continue with part 2 of our story.
Hold your horses, sis. We're nearly there. It's past that bend in the road. Not long now. But I need to drive very carefully. As you know, this road is bumpy, and there's a nasty pit somewhere around here. I have to avoid it, otherwise I could do one of my tyres in badly. And my car is new. I want to avoid that.
I sighed. I don't know why you persuaded me to come out tonight. You know I don't like the dark. It freaks me out. And there are no guarantees we're going to see this white owl you keep talking about, if it indeed exists.
I think we have a very good chance of seeing her, sis. Don't be so pessimistic. Honestly, listen to yourself. I'd not make up a story like this just to get you to join me on a nightly adventure. Even I prefer to have less spirited conversations at this late time of night. You're not exactly the most amenable passenger, are you? You're quite prickly, especially after you've just been woken up. I know how much you love owls, sis. That's why I went out of my way to take you to see it. It might be nice if you were a wee bit appreciative instead of grumbling all the time. I don't know why I even bothered. I thought you would be thrilled to see an owl like this.
I told you, I don't like it out here. It's so dark. It's foreboding.
Not long now, sis. We're nearly there, and then I'll take you straight back home, I promise. But you don't want to miss out on an opportunity like this of seeing such a splendid bird. Believe me, I know you'll be thanking me.
I was feeling exceedingly frustrated with my brother, who had absolutely no fear of the dark, and he had wantonly brought up Mr. Weatherby's ghostly account, and was causing chills to roll down my spine. I was seriously beginning to wish I had not been persuaded to come out tonight. I was half expecting to see a sighting of the highway robber himself galloping through the trees, on his black horse, glaring at us through bright red eyes, and I was inwardly begging for this nightly excursion to be over, and the enthusiasm that I had previously engaged in, to see this nocturnal predator of the night, which I held in high esteem, was now whittling away very fast.
Here we are,
said my brother, parking his car next to a tree. I noticed a long branch stretched over the edge of the road. It reached out towards us like a gnarled arm.
The owl was on that branch over there, he told me, but it's gone.
I don't believe it. This isn't funny, Clayton, I groaned. You told me I was going to see this owl, didn't you? We've come out all this way tonight for no reason at all. Did I not tell you the owl would have flown away, but you would not listen, would you? Now let's go back to the house, I said obsequiously, unable to disguise the irritation in my voice. I knew I shouldn't have come out tonight, but my brother could be so damn persuasive at times.
Hold your horses, Fiona. Don't be so damn defeatist. It's likely the owl has flown into the woodgrove over there. I've got torches for the two of us. Maybe it's hunting. Imagine the mice and the rodents running around in those trees. It's probably like an all-you-can-eat buffet in there. Let's see if we can find it. Perhaps we can watch it in the middle of one of its hunts. Who knows? It's terribly exciting if you ask me.
I stared at my brother incredulously. Are you completely out of your mind? I'm not going into that woodgrove at this time of the night in pursuit of an owl that has long since flown away. The chances of seeing it in the middle of the hunt, well, that's not going to happen, is it? You're deliriously delusional if you believe that.
Oh, for goodness sake, Fiona, what's wrong with you? You can be just like Mother, so damn pessimistic at times. I'm going into that woodgrove to see if I can see the owl for myself. You wait here.
No, you can't do that. Don't go, Clayton. I'm not interested in the owl anymore. I'm not at all interested in it anymore. I just want to get back home. That's all I care about. And you can't just leave me in the car all on my own. You can't do that.
Well, I'm going to, said my brother. If you want to come with me or not, it's your choice. I've got a good feeling the owl is in there. You can stay in the car. I won't be long," he said, climbing outside the driver's side door and slamming it behind him so loudly that I almost jumped out of my skin. There was no way on God's earth he was going to leave me in the car all on my own. Anything could be out there. Anything. What if I saw the ghost of the highwayman that Mr. Weatherby had seen? "No, you can't go. You can't leave me here. Wait for me. I'm coming with you." I was now resigned to the fact that I was going to have to go exploring in the woodgrove with my brother, all in pursuit of a white owl. I knew my brother had me by the short and curlies, so reluctantly, with a great deal of trepidation, I followed my brother into that woodgrove, unable to believe I was actually doing this. I knew unequivocally we were not going to see this owl, but my brother's stubbornly mulish determination to embark on this ridiculous fruitless search for the bird was resolute and unwavering, and Clayton could be exceedingly obstinate at the very best of times. I climbed out of the passenger side door, closing it behind me, met by the cool blasts of fresh air. The woodgrove of trees stretched out before us like a congregation of dark, foreboding silhouettes that were like dense cardboard cutouts on the landscape. The night was filled with the trills of crickets and frogs, and I could hear the hoots of a distant owl. Thankfully, with our torches in our hands, we could see our way ahead of us clearly, but the earthen paths were rocky and full of gnarled, ugly roots that clawed their way across the walking trails like angry tentacles that wanted to grab you at any opportunity. There was a pleasant smell in the woodgrove, a woody pine smell, intermingled with the scent of what I can only describe as sweet jasmine, or something of a similar nature with an intoxicating bouquet. We had been walking for a long while, tripping over roots and smooshing the leaf litter beneath our rubber soles. My brother stopped me suddenly and whispered, "Shh, Fiona, shh." "There she is, over there," he said, pointing to an extended tree branch. I gasped in amazement. There, perched on the tree, with a rodent of some kind grasped between its large claws, was the largest, most majestic white owl that I have ever seen. In that beautiful, magic second, I forgot my fear, that vaporized as quickly as an air freshener on the wind. I stared in devoted, wondrous awe at this spectacular bird. My brother had not been remotely exaggerating. I have never before or since beheld an owl like this. The imposing, unabashed, rather bold bird seemed unfazed and undaunted by our presence. Its blazing yellow eyes focused on us, but she remained valiantly perched on the branch, and was tearing her fleshy prey apart, eating it hungrily, stuffing the lumps of meat into her beak, and pausing gracefully between mouthfuls, as if savouring the delectable flavour, which I suspected was a rat of some kind. I don't know how long we stood there watching this owl, but I do know this: my brother was as mesmerised by her as I was. I suddenly was exceedingly glad I'd come out tonight with my brother. The owl let out a loud hoot, and then ascended masterfully into the air, with outstretched wings that momentarily fanned us. Then she flew away, and was gone. I felt the disappointment wash over me when she'd gone away, because I knew I would unlikely ever get to see an owl like her again. I needed to sear the memory of my encounter with her in my mind, so that it would never ever be forgotten. "I told you," said my brother, in a self-congratulatory tone of voice. "I told you she would be here, didn't I? And I was right. Wasn't she spectacular? Have you ever seen such an extraordinary owl before?" "No, I can't say I have," I admitted. "Thank you, Clayton. Thank you for bringing me here tonight. I wouldn't have missed this opportunity for the world. I'm sorry I was a wee bit crabby earlier on." "Well, let's not kid. You were being rather cantankerous. But I'm glad I brought you here, sis," he admitted. "I'm really appreciative of being able to share this experience with you. Now let's get back home, shall we? Before Mum and Dad find out I've been taking you out at the dead of night on nighttime adventures," he teased, giving me a friendly brotherly slap on my back. All of a sudden, everything in the woodgrove changed. It happened so fast, like the flick of a light switch going on and off. Only moments before,
The woodgrove had been filled with the happy trills of crickets and frogs. But after the owl had flown away, the forest had slipped into a dark, uncongenial malaise. Everything had become deadly quiet, so inauspiciously quiet that the night itself announced a dangerous presence within its midst. It was so poignant that I could feel these prickles of impending dread trickling down my spine and all over every single cell in my body. The first thing that hit me really hard was the appallingly foul stench that seized my nostrils with a dominating intensity that left me coughing, spluttering, and gasping for air. It smelt of sweat, cheesy trainers, decaying flesh, the smell possibly of a dead corpse, or what I would perceive it likely would smell like. It was a smell that stays with you, and even thinking about the smell leaves me feeling green at the gills. It was obnoxiously foul, so much so that my eyes began to water, my throat burned. I felt as if I wanted to throw out the contents of my stomach, and I very nearly did. But I fought the need to vomit by grabbing a smelly flower on the forest floor, to bury my nose in the folds of its petals, to subdue the overpowering odour, and it worked to a degree, but not terribly well. You would think me and my brother would instinctively run back to the car, as fast as we possibly could, but something seemed to immobilise us. Like trees in the grove, we seemed anchored to the spot, as if we'd become momentarily paralysed by some powerful unseen force. In the soft ethereal spillage of silvery moonlight that bounded gracefully through the trees, conjoined with the illumination from our torches, I could see fear written in my brother's brown eyes, which did little to soothe my own inflamed fear, that like a rising temperature was beginning to soar. My brother, whom had never been afraid a single day in his life, looked as if he thought as if the woodgrove had suddenly transformed itself into Jurassic Park, and had unleashed its invisible, unseen wrath upon us. "Shh! Shh! Shh! Sis," he whispered, "we need to get the hell out of here. Something is watching us, and whatever it is, it's not good. I can feel we're in danger." I could hear the urgency in his voice, but much like a boat trying to navigate its way across the obscure aquatic weed, it was exceedingly difficult to trundle forwards, down those formidable ambiguous paths, bathed in the density of the night shadows that teasingly danced through the trees, only increasing the dull, throbbing ache of my heart. I felt as if my legs were weighed down with cement, and as if my light, agile body had suddenly become enormously heavy. I could feel the unseen eyes drilling into the back of my neck, burrowing into my skull. My brother's voice rang into my ears like a clamorous loud bell. "Run, Fiona, run!" He tried to pull my arm, and that was when I saw it. The light of the moon that had clandestinely hidden so much in the dark shadows had now given me a glimpse of the most horrifying creature that I have ever beheld. "Oh my God!" I cried out. "Look, Clayton, look, over there! What is it?" Me and my brother were staring at a creature standing on a tree branch, looking down at us with such a cocky, arrogant swagger. He looked as if he was savouring the taste of our fear, as if he was toying with us. He was deliberately moving the tree branch up and down with his powerful foot, so that he was rocking himself backwards and forwards, which made him look demented and somewhat deranged. He was about 7 foot tall, with a humanoid silhouette, but he had the muzzle of a dog and 2 perky upturned ears. Even though the face had some human influences to it, the long, streamlined, muscular body was covered in a dense thicket of dark hair, and its overlong arms branched out into human-like hands with sharp dagger-like talons. The creature's powerful canine jaws boasted 2 rows of fierce, jagged canine teeth. This creature appeared to be drooling over us. The first thought that came into my head is, "Oh my God, it wants to eat us." At one point I could swear the creature was laughing at us, but its bright red eyes glared at us with such an intense hatred that it was palpable. The impression I got was that even if this creature did not want to kill us for food, he'd kill us just for the pleasure, a little like a fox in a chicken coop that indiscriminately bites off the heads of all the chickens, just for the hell of it. And why not? My brother was screaming at me to run, as were the shrill, wretched cries in my own head. that were urging me to move, to get the hell out of here. My heart was thumping so loudly, I could feel its intense vibrations in my throat. I began to hightail it through the woodgrove, my torch flouncing in my hand. I was trembling so much. My feet were being twisted by the roots that plundered aggressively through the ground, that were not accommodating my need to flee on this treacherously vindictive night, where even the elements of nature were not favouring my escape from the clutches of the most monstrous wolf-like beast that I have ever seen. I was kicking up dirt and debris as I ran. I didn't look back, but I knew it was behind me. I'd heard the critter jump nimbly to the ground like a cat off a kitchen sideboard, as if its legs were blessed with a similar agile buoyancy. Then it was behind me. I could feel it, smell it, I could hear it. My brother grabbed my hand, and we just ran and ran and ran as fast as we possibly could. With trembling fingers, we locked the door behind us, and my brother immediately put his foot on the accelerator, hard and fast. The creature jumped onto the hood. It was glaring in at us through the windscreen window. Me and my brother began to scream. I could see blood all over the creature's muzzle, possibly from something it had recently eaten. It was angrily banging the windscreen window with its fists, as if it was determined to gain entry in our car. It was so agile on its feet that even though my brother's rubber tyres wobbled and rattled precariously as we sped away over uneven terrain, the obstinate creature remained superglued to the car, unfazed by its jerking movements. We had to get it off the car so we could run over it and kill it, but we knew that that was unlikely to ever happen. "He's going to kill us! He's going to kill us!" I said to my brother. The creature's red eyes were glaring at us. He gave us that "I want to kill you" dagger-like look. He was growling at us. Then the most bizarre thing happened. We heard this rather strange howling sound, the kind of sound that wolves make. It was almost as if something was calling the creature. He then lost interest in us. His attention was diverted by those calls, and he bounced off our car and just ambled away. "It's gone!" I shrieked. "Clayton, it's gone! Drive! For God's sake, drive! We don't want it coming back!" My brother did not need any further encouragement. He pressed his foot down on the accelerator, and we whipped down those country roads with the boisterous ferocity of a powerful wind, hardly daring to draw breath, until finally we were safely indoors. "For God's sake, Fiona," said my brother, "under no circumstances breathe a word of what we've seen tonight to Mum or Dad. We cannot let them know what we've encountered, do you understand? They, for a start, will not allow me to ever drive at night again, and that would be dreadful for me. And also they will kill me for being irresponsible with you, by taking you out at such an ungodly hour of the night." "Don't worry, I won't say a word, Clayton. But what the hell was that thing that we saw?" "It was the devil's spawn," said my brother. "I thought you were crazy to be afraid of things that go bump in the night. I thought monsters did not exist. But you know what, sis? They do. I saw one tonight, and there is no doubt in my mind that we are lucky to be alive. That thing wanted us dead." "I know," I said, feeling too numb and too freaked out to even cry. But believe me, the tears of relief came much later. Right now, I was glad to be alive. I was certain that things could have panned out so differently for us if something had not called out to that wolf-like humanoid. "I don't know," said my brother, "but I will wager this. We will unlikely ever see that thing again. But it wanted us dead. Don't doubt that for a second. But we're alive, and that's all that matters, sis. It seems that Grandpops is right. There are strange creatures out here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, creatures that I had no idea that actually exist in our reality. It seems there's more to this world than meets the eye." The next morning my brother told me he'd cleaned up this green gobby goo and blood all over the windscreen windows of the car. It was a miracle it hadn't been badly scratched up, as that thing had sharp claws, but luckily my brother's Buick escaped with its life. 3 weeks later, I liked Mrs. Doris Rosenberger, although I don't know whether her name was pronounced Rosenberger or Rosenberger, but I'm just going to call her Rosenberger. She was one of our family's good friends, who lived very close to our farmhouse, and was our nearest neighbour. It was the area where me and my brother had spotted that strange wolf-like humanoid and the spectacular white owl. She had recently divorced her husband Giles and was very much living a solitary life on a cattle ranch that was run by both of her younger sons. Their youngest son was Edwin, who was my brother's age, and they spent a lot of time together at the Rosenberger Ranch, drinking beer and listening to music in the late evenings. My brother and Edwin had gone to school together and were the very best of friends who had so much in common and seemed to ride the night hours together like a couple of witches on their broomsticks, as sleep eluded them both. Mrs. Rosenberger often joined our family for dinner without her sons, and on this Friday evening she floated into our farmhouse, looking as colourful and alluring as a butterfly on a flower. Doris always made a special effort to look good when she came out for dinner, and this evening was no exception to that rule. The woman was in her early 50s and was wearing a long cotton cobalt blue dress with white buttons down the middle and puffy sleeves. She was an elegant lady who had long, sleek black hair, caressed with grey streaks, and although her hair was naturally greying, the grey streaks accentuated her face and gave you the impression her hair was skillfully highlighted by a prestigious hair salon. But she had assured me it was all natural. She had dark eyes and a very bright, fetching smile. "Don't you look wonderful, Doris?" my mother said, beckoning Mrs. Rosenberger into the house. She was carrying a bottle of wine in her hands, which she handed over to my mother. She always brought wine when she came to visit us. "Well, you know me," she said, chuckling. "Any excuse to dress up, and I take it, don't I? I get so tired of wearing jeans and boots all the time. And now we're enjoying spring. Well, the weather is so much warmer, so it's the perfect excuse to dress up, isn't it?" "You look lovely, Mrs. Rosenberger, and I hope when I get to your age I look like you, because if I do I'll be really pleased." "That's very kind of you to say so, Fiona. You've always been such a complimentary young lady, haven't you? You look rather fetching yourself in that pretty white frock you're wearing. And your hair up against your face. It really suits you." "Thanks, Mrs. Rosenberger. I knew you would make an effort for dinner, so I thought I'd also do the same and wear a dress." Soon we were all gathered around the dinner table, enjoying a delicious meal together that my mother had cooked, and on this occasion it was beef and ale pie, served with runner beans and mashed potatoes. It was absolutely delicious, and for a moment all you could hear was the appreciative clatter of cutlery and the clink of glasses as we dived into the food with gusto. After Mrs. Rosenberg had satisfied herself with several mouthfuls of pie, she reached out to take a sip of her Cabernet Sauvignon, and her red lipstick smeared the side of the glass. She took her white starched napkin to wipe the crumbs of pastry away from her mouth. "This is absolutely delicious," she told my mother. "But then again, you are the most marvellous cook. The beef is so tender, so succulent, and I really do like the sauce. I can definitely taste the ale in it. It's fabulous." "Thank you," my mother said. "Now I must ask you," she said, "you haven't had any strange activity on your farm, have you, of late? Your horses, for example. They haven't been acting up, have they?"
"What's this about, Doris?" asked my father, raising a brow. "As far as I know, everything has been fine around here. And no, the horses have been very well, happily frolicking in the fields. If anything were remotely amiss, our American Quarter Horse Bay Ram, well, he would be behaving oddly at the first sign of trouble. He's a very nervous horse, you see. Recently he's been unusually calm, so no, we haven't had any unusual activity on the farm, so to speak. Are you talking about coyotes, bothering your steers, perhaps? Is that what this is about?"
"Oh, absolutely not," said Mrs. Rosenberger. "Something a lot more ambiguous than that. But whatever it is, it's unsettled the steers. And if anything upsets the steers, it upsets me, if you understand what I'm saying. I don't want it to affect the quality of the meat, you see. It's not good to have upset animals, although the Chinese have this bizarre notion that adrenaline boosts the quality of the meat. I hasten to say I disagree with that, totally. In my experience, a happy steer produces very good quality meat. Do you know, Duncan, my oldest son, did an experiment once. He'd play his sax on the steers, and we discovered the quality of the meat was the best ever. So now he continuously plays his sax to them. They love the music. It relaxes them. Some farmers who have dairy herds find the milk yield improves exponentially if they play Bach or Mozart to their cows. The night before last, well, something very bizarre happened on our ranch. Has Edwin told you about it, Clayton? She asked my brother.
No, he hasn't said a word, said my brother,
the lines between his brow beginning to furrow.
He didn't mention a thing, actually.
Maybe that's because he's still trying to process it all. Poor boy, he's had such a dreadful shock, you see.
What happened? Asked my father. I'm intrigued.
That's the curious question. I don't exactly know. Edwin goes to bed late every night. I don't know why, but in his 20s he's become a wee bit of a night owl. I think you'd popped over to see him, Clayton, the other night for a couple of beers, as you often do. He said you left the ranch at roughly about 12:30, so you boys certainly do like to paint the night red. I'm the other way round. I like to rise early and go to bed early. Duncan is much the same as me. After a long, exhausting day at the ranch, he's completely exhausted, and the moment his head hits the pillow, he's out like a light. Edwin, on the other hand, well, he has idiosyncratic biorhythms, so he was up and about, and was getting ready to retire. That was when he heard a huge commotion going on with the steers. They were making quite a noise. He knew something was up, so he hurriedly gathered his rifle and ran to the meadow. He said they were gathered together in a group, all the steers, obviously terrified, their eyes focused on something. Edwin had his rifle with him, and that's when he saw this obscure, very threatening-looking figure. He said it looked like a wolf man. I know that sounds strange, but he's adamant that that is what he saw, and I know it sounds impossible to believe, but he's not making it up. He said it was absolutely huge. Honestly, she said, dabbing the perspiration away from her forehead, I remind myself that he'd enjoyed a couple of beers. But he did see something out there, and shot after it. Edwin thinks he got it in the arm. It let out a loud, agonizing screech. In the morning he discovered a long trail of blood over the grass. The steers were most upset, and one of the steers had 5 gashes down its flank, as if something with very sharp, aggressive claws had lashed out at it. Naturally, we called the vet out at once, and he's never seen anything like it before. He was terribly bemused. He couldn't figure out what it was that had attacked the steer. I do not know what it was that Edwin saw, but I am grievously concerned that this thing might come back. Edwin is determined to keep a vigil to see if this thing does indeed return, and if it does, he's determined to take it out. But I'm not sure I fancy his chances. The thing sounds awfully intimidating as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if Edwin knows what he's up against. Me and my brother exchanged knowing looks, but my brother indicated for me not to say a thing by kicking me under the table. But we knew exactly what it was that Edwin had seen that inauspicious night, and if this thing imposed a threat to the Rosenberger steers, it could potentially become a very big problem.
Oh dear, said my father. This doesn't sound at all good. My father, you know, he always used to speak of strange creatures roaming around the Blue Ridge Mountains. I never took him very seriously, but it seems I was wrong, very wrong. I think I assumed I knew it all. But nature has a funny way of proving you wrong.
So there we are. That's the end of part 2 of our story, Part 3 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.